The ESUB webinar series is designed to offer our partners a platform to discuss hot topics affecting the overall construction industry, but most importantly, address issues that can help subcontractors become more successful. ESUB's powerful mobile and cloud-based productivity software helps subcontractors get the most out of every project. Today's special guest presenter is Jim Shug, the Principal and Operations Director with FMI Consulting, to discuss the impacts of offsite construction. Jim, please take it away and welcome.
Hey, thanks so much. It's awesome. We've partnered with ESUB for years. Enjoy seeing you guys at conferences and got clients that use ESUB, and so pretty awesome. Awesome to be part of the webinar, and happy to talk to the group. And hey, hopefully this is interactive. I got a couple questions as we go. There's a chat box there, so certainly send your emails or comments. I do a lot of trying to get out and speak to the market, association meetings and conferences once every 2 or 3 months, and so I much prefer interactive workshop styles than a lecture. So please participate and shoot your questions. I think this is a collaborative forum as much as we can make it. It's going to be even more collaborative if I can't get technology to work well. So we did some research. We've been doing a lot of research. We've been doing a lot of help, and we've been a lot of working with customers around offsite construction as a trend. And you've heard me in other webinars, and I'm happy to talk to you about it, that this industry that we've got is going, it's really hitting this inflection point where we're getting closer and closer to an intersection where you could continue doing things the same way, and that's fine. There will always be work out there if you keep doing things the same way. Or if you choose the other route, you can continue to scale up and take the better work and do it with more profit. And we're seeing some real fundamental shifts in the market. And we're seeing this when I talk. FMI works with companies from 5 million to some of the largest. I mean, we're not picky. I will get on the phone with any of you. If you're a $2 million company, I'd be happy to talk on the phone with you to explore how we can work together. But you know, we work at a broad range across the construction industry with generals and subcontractors. I spend a lot of my time with subcontractors and helping them think through this market and then help them implement the change and so that they need. And as you'll see, change in any organization is tough. And so this quote is interesting because these patterns of change that are hitting the construction environment are hitting it fast. And so some firms are adapting to it. What we kind of see, and it's classic innovator's dilemma from the academic studies that as we've seen shape Kodak and Instagram and other industries. We're starting to see firms like Katerra, who is building a platform that is vertically integrated. I've got some developer friends and colleagues that are thinking about building manufacturing plants for apartments. There are national builders of residential homes that are talking about vertically integrating. And so what we see, I don't know there's a perfect solution, but we definitely see this trend hitting and impacting the market. There are general contractors that are trying to completely self-perform projects, and some of them are, some of them in the papers. You could read on the E&R. And so it's interesting. Some of that's timely. It's given a good market. Some of it's for them to study and understand better. Some of it, they think that's the right business model going forward. And so we're seeing a lot of these patterns of change. And as he says in this quote, I mean, I think some of these are going to reshape the business landscape. And so from a business model or a company strategy perspective, we don't want our clients caught flat-footed or caught off guard. I don't want you on the laggard side of these trends. I want you to think about the right way to spend and invest in where these are going and keep in front of it. It doesn't mean you have to buy a manufacturing plant tomorrow, but it does mean keeping up with it, understanding it, and understanding how it impacts your customers and your company. And so that's really what I wanted to share with you. Some of our insights, pick your brain a little as an audience, share what we see, the challenges, the trend, the challenges around the trend, and then share a business model that we look to around offsite construction that might get us started in a conversation. If all that sounds good and you want to explore more, give me a call. We can run a survey within your company or a survey that you could take to further diagnose some of this at no cost, just to kind of explore this. There are three major trends impacting the construction industry today. Many of you heard of it. I've talked on these at a national level on webinars like this and others. And it's interesting. There are three major trends and that are impacting the industry. And so we said technology is one of them. And it seems that technology is really reshaping. It's really reshaping the industry. It's having a huge impact. It is not a cure-all. It is not a vitamin you take in the morning that's going to fix things. But it sure is something that can make us more efficient. It is something that can help us with our risks. It is an enabler. We like to think of technology as a tool. And as technology is a tool, in the right hands, with the right leadership, when it's integrated properly with operations, it can really be what we used to call, when I was in the Army, a combat multiplier. It can be an enhancer for any of your initiatives. Technology can help you. All technologies aren't great. There's you probably get a million calls from different technology vendors for the contractors on the call, trying to say ours is everything and it'll fix everything. ESUB is not one of those that's going to try to fix everything. They know where they are. That's why we like to partner with them. And so technology is a trend. It's shaping the industry. I like to think of technology in that it helps us share information quickly if it's used right. So I could share information to the field and back from the field to the office instantaneously and accurately. And that is amazing. That is an enabler. No longer one of the biggest barriers to our project management of projects. Barriers is that it's communication. And so technology done right and implemented well can do that and can do that effectively. The other thing technology allows us to do is gather and analyze data. And so data is the new oil. If I have good data, I can help make insightful decisions. And so there's some definite value around how our companies creating awareness and how our companies sharing information seamlessly to make better decisions faster. And so that's what we see technology to do. Now, again, I can thrust technology into any firm, and it might not work because we didn't implement it well. So that's one big, and it seems more and more, if you start thinking about hardware and some of the exoskeletons and robots, it seems the ability for technology to impact us has surpassed our understanding of what to do with it. So in other words, we're no longer waiting for technology to be able to do something. It's now our ability to creatively say, what if we ... Because the technology is really that advanced. The iPhone, I think I have the iPhone 10 today, but the iPhone 10 can do some pretty amazing things that I think it's more powerful than the devices that put man on the moon back in the 60s at this point, and it sits in my pocket, and I barely know how to use it. So the flip side of technology, in some of our clients, they're very frustrated that their foremen, their foremen have app fatigue, that companies have so much tried hard to embrace technology, they've thrown every different technology at their field, and their field is tired of it. And they're saying, look, all these things aren't going to cure it all, and we can't even keep up with it. We don't even know which one to use when. So please stop. We don't want to see this other quick solution. We need to better organize our processes and systems. So what we like to think of is companies need to have best practices about how they do work, and technology can supplement that. Again, it's a tool. We'll talk about offsite construction, and then the last trend here is the war for talent. And I put that in capital letters a little bit because I think it's that important. It is the shortage of skilled workforce, the shortage of leaders in management. Generation X, we know, is the smallest generation. That's the 40-year-olds. And that's really the generation stepping into the breach of leadership today. And that's a small generation. And so attracting Gen Yers or millennials to this industry is a challenge. We know that there was a decade of talent development that this industry missed. Think about, I hire somebody, I teach them how to be a tradesman, a plumber, I teach them how to be a phenomenal drywaller. They then become the lead man for that crew over 3-4 years. They become a foreman for a crew at 4 and 5 years. They now move up at 8 years to superintendent. And maybe they're general superintendent if they're gung-ho and we got the right opportunities and growth and they're the right person and a good fit. In 10, 15 years, I got a general superintendent. I got a senior manager that can run the field, that understands the technical know-how and came from that background. Because of the past 10 years in this industry, it's been a little slower. We've almost missed that development as an industry. And so and it's a smaller generation. So the baby boomers are retiring. We're losing, as an industry, losing a lot of talent. Again, so our operations group at FMI has been called on a lot recently because people have turned to technology as a quick fix, and that they need an operational best practice, because we need, as we promote young foremen quickly, we have to have foremen. We're going to take somebody that's a good raw material, but maybe they're a little underqualified. I've got to have a solid bedrock of best practices behind them. I can't just promote them and have them do whatever. I need to say, hey, here's our FMI way, or here's our BR Freeze way, or here's our company way of how we do things. And that is now the way that we do things that people can follow. It's a set of guidance and processes and tools and systems that the company can rely upon. And so those are things that War for Talent needs a bedrock of excellent operations. When I couple those three major trends, you got the finger pointing there to a good market. We've got a very strong market. If you haven't seen our latest outlook, we've got a quarterly outlook we published. This is an excerpt from it. I could send you more. Send me an email. I'll send you the slides, or get on the phone and talk to you about it. Or maybe Tyler, we could do that next time. But we're continuing to see a strong market. It's not an incredible market, but it's a good market. You could see some single-family homes at the top far right is a big market. Residential improvements is a big market. You'll see multifamily, educational, commercial, office, manufacturing, transportation. I mean, those are good growth markets for the next 5 years. And by good, we mean, whatever that is, 5 to 7%, but it's a solid market. So we don't expect the earth to crash or stop spinning. We expect that the fundamentals continue to be in place for solid growth. And that's good. I mean, we're just hitting capacity of put in place from the recession. We're there, depending on some measures, we're there. And we're seeing solid work in front of all of us. Every billing index, the Architectural Billings Index, FMI's Non-Residential Construction Index, AGCs, ABCs, all of them look positive. There's a positive outlook for the future. And so there's a demand for contractors. And so now we've got money to spend, and we've got a solid future to invest in our future. And so we're starting to see these three trends are feeding on each other. It's because of a shortage of talent. I want to use technology. I want to use technology because Generation Y likes technology and embraces it easier. I want to use technology because it's there and it's prevalent and it's not super expensive anymore. I want to use offsite construction because I've got less crews. And so I don't have as many crews available. So if I could figure out how to build more in a plant, prefab, or make it modular, whatever that looks like in your world, if I could figure out how to do more of that with a lower tiered worker, repeat work in a controlled environment, I can now position these so that the 5 crews that I have that are well qualified can then install it when they are break free. So it looks a little different than a manufacturing facility because I don't want the same even flow. I almost think I could batch work a little more. So this offsite construction is now looked at as not only are owners seeing it as a way to mitigate risk, but contractors looking at it as a way to relieve some of the capacity challenges they've got. And if I could pull things out of the field where there's a lot of risk, and I could put them in a more fixed facility, I'm Lean Six Sigma certified. I can now start to apply some of those Six Sigma and traditional lean processes to the plant, to the manufacturing facility, to the offsite controlled environment. It gets hard to apply Six Sigma and lean principles, true lean principles, to a construction project because there's so many different variables out there. But if I do it under air in a more controlled environment, making assemblies, and you pick the assemblies, but making some assemblies, I could start to measure them and create efficiencies there. And so these two, those three major trends, coupled with a strong market, it's becoming an accelerant for a lot of these. And again, I used the word Katerra earlier, and I'd only mention what we've seen in the papers. We've done some work with Katerra, and to a certain point, there's support in the market behind what they're doing because there's growth in the market, and so there are folks willing to invest in different capabilities and different offsite construction methods. It's worth taking one step back before we dig deep or get more into prefab and think about what operations is to a contractor. And our view, FMI's view, and I spend a lot of time with folks, operational leaders across the industry, helping them improve. It's an ecosystem. It's a combination of these 8 different traits that you see on the screen. And within each one of your companies, these things combine to form unique strengths and capabilities that yield success for your customers. So if you're in your market trying to be lowest cost provider, your systems and structure looks different than somebody who's working on high-end luxury projects. And most of you know that. I mean, that's intuitive. But the skills that your people have are different than somebody that does high-end commercial work. And so we've got to think about this. Operations is an ecosystem of those things. Certainly you have to have those things, but what's the right combination for your company to be very successful and give you a competitive edge? So take that and step back to the prefabrication world. Now we think about offsite construction, how it layers on top of that. Offsite construction is another method to do these things well. In fact, it's a method, it's in some ways, within some companies, offsite construction is a business model. It's a little bit of a different business model, pricing structure around materials, different set of skills to estimate and prefab and coordinate what we're going to prefab in the shop. It's different systems. It's almost like we're adding 1 or 2 new systems to the typical contracting organization when we build this out. Maybe more. Different measurements. We can't just use the same old measurements necessarily and still be successful. And there are different technologies. And so we start to think about how we're going to do that. We've seen a lot of companies that struggled with implementing prefabrication effectively. And a lot of it is because they tried to build stuff in the shop and use some different methods to measure it. And then when we started getting out to the field and figure out why the field wasn't embracing it, and it's because it was costed wrong. Or it's because some foreman in the field didn't understand the big picture or didn't understand our compensation system didn't align with what we're trying to do and drive. And so we could build out a capability around offsite construction, but we've got to, it fits within a subset. It is a piece of operations as a whole. And so prefab and offsite is part of the operations within the company. So we're about advocating and implementing best-in-class operations. I need you to consistently perform very well in project to project. And even if I throw the best person, I can only put the best person on 1 or 2 jobs. I can't have the best person on every job. And so that's where I need to start thinking about how do we train people? What systems and best practices do we have? Do we have the right tools and skills and processes? And maybe we could leverage technology like we talked about. And then how do I lead that change and motivate people to get on board with these changes? That's really the broader umbrella we're talking about. Like I said, then in many ways, offsite construction fits within that. What are your questions so far? I feel like I've been talking quite a bit. I was going to pan open and see if there's any big questions.
Jim, it doesn't look like we have any questions right now. So,
awesome. I've done that good to go.
Kind of quiet. Maybe post Memorial Day.
They've all left. Either one. They've all left. Or yeah. All right. So I got a question for you guys here in a second. Good. So look, we've done probably now, I've been part of 3 research projects around prefabrication, industry-wide. We've done a prefab survey maybe 4 or 5 years ago around where is prefab, and that was 2013, so 5 years ago. We did that first one because we had a feeling prefab, so it was probably 20 slides. We might have talked to this group about it. We just redid that one maybe 2 years ago to compare where are things going and how are they changing. That's one. So we reached out to 300 contractors across the industry, many of them are clients, and said, what do you think about prefab? Do you see more or less? Is it harder? Et cetera. The other one we did was on behalf of Built Worlds, which is a neat association of leading contractors thinking about the environment and mostly technology around the environment. They kind of said, hey, what do owners want around prefab and what's driving owners? And so we on behalf of Built Worlds reached out to a bunch of program owners to understand their mindset around prefab and why they want it. And the truth is a lot of owners like prefab because it reduces risk. It reduces project risk. And I have seen some of the biggest owners in rooms tell contractors they'll do amazing things they've never considered doing before as long as we do off-site construction more, because they feel they can. It gets them away from the scary construction world where everything's stick-built and there's crazy and chaos and messiness happening in the field, and it brings it to a little more of a controlled environment where they can track and see components being built and assembled and then brought to the field. So in an industrial sense, we've seen that that's happened. I've seen big components assembled and shipped down rivers for some clients. In fact, I've got some key clients that they've bought property along rivers so they can dock, because that's part of their business plan now. That's a capability they need, so they can more readily have accessible transportation for these large modules and components. So that's been something happening around in certain parts of the industrial world. We're starting to see that move certainly towards healthcare, definitely towards multifamily, often towards prisons. Anytime I've got repeatability, and then there's folks saying, hey, how do we change the design so that it's more than just where I have 500 rooms, let's prefab stuff. It's now, how do I design things so that I could use redundant components? So we've seen the owners are starting to say, hey, we like this off-site construction thing because it reduces our risk, and we're willing to lock contractors in earlier and plan better, which is amazing to hear, if we can do it. And so we've been part of some of those conversations, and like I said, it's been cool to see some of those owners willing to plan more on the front end, which I think fundamentally would make our lives easier as contractors. It's the lack of planning and commitment on the front end that we usually struggle with. So let's have better plans and let's stick with them. So again, we think it's prefab or modular or offsite has an impact on the rest of the industry, because if we're got owners saying to do it, we'll plan more and plan earlier and plan better. That's a neat thing. That's a neat thing. And that's big. That's high level. The last we've done for a major labor union, we've reached out and reached out to a lot of different contractors on their behalf to understand the prefab environment and where it's going. And so those three and others, and then working with contractors and speaking and then leading operational excellence forums around the country, we've got a lot of data points and a lot of research to help us understand what the challenges are, what's the best in class look like, and what are the challenges. And so here's a good example. I mean, the trend is there. And I think everyone on the call, you're on the call because you recognize or are concerned or interested in or already started investing in that trend. And we're seeing a big push towards it. This was in our research, one of those reports I just mentioned, but Jeff Golden leads a company, I think they just rebranded the name of the company, in Alabama that is partnered with a modular firm. And so it's really neat to hear the shift this is having on the industry. And that's why we included this. It is now a competitive differentiator to be able to do off-site construction. And it's advantageous to the contractor as well as to the owner. And so we're starting to see general contractors saying, what do we need to do here? Which is neat if you're a self-perform contractor for them to ask those questions. What can we do to make your lives easier to prefab more subcontractors? That's neat. How do we design better? Do we need to do more BIM? Let's embrace BIM. BIM or modeling, virtual design is becomes more important for us to model what we're going to prefab and do offsite construction in. And so that's, again, these are probably very healthy trends for the industry that overall is moving us towards improving what we do, taking risk and contingency out of contracts, because we're going to be able to plan better and have better plans for us to build off of. So it's neat. So it's no longer now. I would argue Golden Construction, who I personally haven't worked directly with, but Golden Construction has been down this road. If anyone on the call knows, I would probably say 4 to 5 years. So they have been almost an innovator in this. They've bet early on this trend and have really developed some of those capabilities. And if anybody knows, Golden Construction is not a mega company by any stretch. They're not in the ENR top 100. They're not a mega company, so it's not like they had a bunch of spare people and money lying around and said, let's toy around with this idea. And so, go ahead. So I would really say it's a couple people that said, hey, there's a theme here. Let's build this innovative and agile approach to how to do this, and let's start small. And that's what we'd advocate. So again, in our mentality, we work with small, middle-sized, and large companies. A large company, it's often hard for them to shift in the market. And so I have a lot of small companies that are doing very, very, very innovative things right now because they can shift quickly. To get your groups of 5 crews or 15 or 50, whatever it is, crews on board is a whole lot easier to get crews on board and implement change than if you have 5,000 crews and you're in the ENR top 10. Those are tough organizations to change. And so for the folks on this call, and I haven't seen the list of names, but I would argue 60% of people on this call at least are you're in a place where you could take advantage of this opportunity. Those 3 trends and a strong market, and having close relationship with and being in the same town as your customers in a lot of cases, you have an opportunity to really innovate and have their support behind it. And so those are things that we enjoy helping our clients with. We'll just look at the total amount.
Yeah, we have a question. This is from Dave Jones. Prefab seems to be newer for GCs and CMs on a project-wide basis, as opposed to mechanicals performing their own scope of work. Are you seeing greater adoption of prefab by mechanical and specialty contractors in general? Do you see specialty contractors pushing CMs and GCs to look at prefab on a project-wide basis?
So both is a great question, because this is the root of a lot of what we're talking about. Wonderful question. You've got both sides of this. It's interesting. Prefab's confusing because it really depends who you talk to or talk with. A general contractor has the opportunity, and if I were to break down the business model, they have 3 options that we can help them think through. One is they vertically integrate, and you'll see that. A general contractor could say, you know what, we're gonna buy a shop over there. We're gonna hire 10 people. We're gonna hire a bunch of pieces of equipment, and we're gonna start making wall panels. And we're gonna use those wall panels. You've seen a couple of the big guys do that. I've seen some small guys do that. They could just vertically integrate. They could strategically partner. That's another option. They could find somebody in town they could make this partnership, revenue sharing, long-term relationship with. Or an easier model, more flexible model, is they could become a better partner with their subcontractors and help pull their subcontractors towards more prefab, and encourage it, which kind of means they have to give a little. The general's going to have to collaborate differently and plan differently, and maybe cash flow is going to change and stuff like that to enable those subcontractors to do it better. And in a lot of cases, I've seen some great general contractors, mid-size, small subcontractors. I've seen them pull each other along, and so it's rather than the PM yelling, "I need more men," it's on the job subcontractors. How come you don't? The general contractor PM yelling, "We need more people. We got to crush the schedule." It's them going, "Hey, there's a way? Why don't we think about prefabbing this and this run? What if we tried this?" And hey, and bringing up those ideas and opportunities and getting the subcontractor recognize it and seeing it, and vice versa. And so it does mean the GC's got to change. We're seeing them collaboratively in markets change. We're seeing that happen, and that's a positive trend. I think right now we'll talk about the measurement. How do you measure that this is better? We'll talk about in a little bit. So that's the part that the verdict is still out on are we all saving money doing it, or is it just helping us with the schedule because I only have so many crews to install, and if I put some folks in a shop that don't understand, they haven't been building things for 20 years, but I could certainly get them to bend pipe in a shop. And I could supervise them better and train them better instead of remotely hoping I've got the right people helping them and installing it right. I could leverage that offsite construction easier. And so yeah, no, we are seeing the trend. Yeah, we are seeing the trend move, and we're seeing more and more. It is inherently in a self-performing contractor's interest to do more self-perform to do more offsite construction. And I'd say that's the biggest. There's the biggest advantage right there. For mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire, you could talk drywall, and there's a couple different trades there to think about how do we do it. And there's some classic ones in the industry that started this a while ago that have gained advantage doing it. And that's some of that's in quality, some of that's in again, you can apply different principles to something that's more controlled, a controlled environment. And I could leverage costs differently, and I could leverage my schedule and capacity at a different way. I could make my life easier as that contractor. So again, some statistics are between our 2010 study and a 2016 study, we've seen the amount of project work almost triple. And all other projections that we've seen, when we've asked, reaching out on surveys, folks, I would argue that that's going to continue at a rapid rate. I don't know if it'll continue to triple, obviously, but I definitely think we'll see a lot more prefab in a lot of these opportunities, and it will continue. And so, I'd be interested on the call, and Tyler, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at the wrong screen, but who is, there's an audience anyway. I was hoping this audience had their hands raised. I think that's for a performance. But anyway, it looked like a very invigorated audience. I think everyone's appropriate too. I had to check, but it looks like everything is safe in that picture. But who is doing some form of prefabrication or modularization or offsite construction? Who's doing that in the audience? Can we do like a show of hands?
I'm seeing one hand raised.
All right, this is a great group.
4, 5. 7 out of 31.
Okay. All right.
So far.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we are, and a lot of it depends. Again, if you're a general contractor, you've got some options. If you're a subcontractor, you got similar options. And so when we do work with vendors, the dealers, if I am a Ferguson Supply, if I am a manufacturer of drywall, if I am ABC Supply, I mean, you name it, I can start to kit supplies. So one option now for subcontractors have the opportunity again to do the same. They can indeed, and you guys all, if you're a subcontractor, especially contractor, you probably are already there, but you could think about strategically, how do we want to do this? So we can vertically integrate. We can build a shop, buy a bunch of tools and equipment, and buy a bunch of machines and get better at prefabbing stuff and hire some people specific to that and go down that venture. That's wonderful. That's vertically integrating and doing it in-house. The other way is to say, hey, how do I partner with my vendors, my suppliers? And so how do I get them to kit supplies for the project? How do I get them to bend or adjust and prefab to what we need so that they're doing it? And in some cases, I know clients that are scared about that, because if we are asking on the industrial side, very often you could be asked for, give me a labor cost and a materials cost. And now the EPC contractor on that world, the EPC contractor can buy materials so that they're already prefabbed, so your folks just have to install it. And so there's a little bit of scariness around where this could take us. If I'm a dealer, again, ABC Supply, if I'm not the manufacturer, but I'm the next step, I think I've got a gut feel that they're going to continue to try to add value to the supply chain. They're going to continue to add value. And so making some modifications, and we've seen contractors pay a tiny bit more per piece or per pound or per foot for things cut the right dimensions, shipped to that job, rather than raw measurements and let your folks stick or cut on site. And so you're really in a strategic partnering model, outsourcing some of that offsite construction in a way to your vendor. So there's another model there. And then some of you, I mean, I know many of you, in your market, you may not be the cheapest on sheet metal. And so you'll just find a vendor in town and subcontract out the sheet metal, and either your employees install it or you let them install it. So there's the other, again, the third model there is just subcontract out the work. The specialization around subcontracting, the theory, academic theory around specialization is better. If that's what I focus on, I'm going to be more efficient at it. That makes sense. You have to kind of test that. So we've got to understand your market and what services you can offer in your market. So let's continue to explore a little bit, and I'll share some other perspectives on it and maybe get some more insights. So contractors using prefab, when we reached out in 2016, they say they're more effective compared to those who do less prefab. And so again, you control it. I've seen advantages on the cost side. So if I prefab something and put it in a shop, I could bill for it in some cases, which is great, as opposed to waiting until it's installed on site. That's not perfect for every contract, and there's certainly some very much variability. But that's a nice advantage. So now I've got things kitted up and ready and shrink wrapped or set on pallets and ready to go. And so when now the project the critical path does open up to where it's our turn, I don't have to just get on site and be stacked. I could go in there and use a lull or a forklift or a crane and install that component. And I know hopefully it's correct. It fits. And there's the challenge. So now we go back to, I think it was Dave Jones's question. There's the challenge. And so I've spent all this time and energy on the front end, and built something to a certain size and specifications. Will it fit on the project? And that's always going to be that delivery to the last mile is always going to be the challenge. And that's something that I would argue you could do a lot of offsite construction that would be advantageous to your company. We're happy to look at those things. But if you really want to get very integrated, it requires you've got a good relationship with your general, and the general has a good relationship with the owner, so that we can influence these things and improve on them. So we're starting to think about how we design earlier on the front end. I think subcontractors or general contractors that are maximizing, certainly all of us could benefit from offsite construction. There's a lot of advantages to your operations, and I could do that with almost any firm. But if you want to really maximize it, strategically, I need to be working with maybe on a more of a negotiated contract if I want to maximize, with a customer, the owner, or general contractor that I can influence, that I could do a little more of a design build on the front end. I could influence the design, that I could do a lot more prep on the front end, right? So that allows us to really maximize it. Again, that would be wonderful. Not every client affords you that, and not all of you are strategically in a market where you could do that. But that's really the top tier firms are trying to move towards doing only that. I mean, that's a much more profitable and pleasant model to build under, as opposed to the let's kick each other in the shins for a year and a half while we build a project and then yell over change orders at the end of it in a lawsuit. I mean, that's not a fun existence. And so I understand that. And even firms that are in that hard bid, every customer is a new customer model. If that's your market, that's fine. There are ways to use offsite construction to gain advantage. But we would like to think that it's going to move the industry a little more towards for bigger projects or for more complex projects towards a more collaborative relationship-based model. The construction 2.0 is what many people are trying to call that, and move towards a little more of an integrated delivery model, which allows for this. So we think about how do you measure success, and Clayton Christensen is a professor at Harvard Business School that taught principles. He wrote, I think, 3 books about innovators. Here's what's interesting. I have a wonderful friend that was in charge of leading prefab for his company. And he was a project manager, senior project manager, and mechanical firm. We'll work with that company for a little while. We went down this road maybe 2 years ago, and he called me and he said, "I'm not doing it anymore." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I'm getting no bonus this year. This is crazy." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, we're bonus based off job success." And I said, "Okay, there's different ways to bonus PMs, but that's fine. Total job cost, expected versus actual, that's the bonus at the end of the year." And he said, "Okay." He said, "Look, I shipped everything out. It was all offsite construction. We made some assemblies. We sent them out in crates. It was all labeled. The foreman got it, said, 'I don't understand any of this,' called the vendor without the PM knowing about it, had a whole other set of materials shipped the old way to the project directly. He installed it the old way, sent the old stuff back. Of course, this PM got, ultimately, the project paid like 1.5 times for materials, maybe 2, but probably 1.5 for materials, if not more. And the PM got dinged for it. And so it's maybe a small example of what Clayton Christensen calls the innovator's dilemma. That I have these old measurements in place that work, and I try something new, and it looks like it doesn't work against the new way we're trying to see if it works. When I compare it to my old models, how this guy was incentivized, because of that one error, it said prefab doesn't work. And I was like, no, prefab did work. We missed a connection there. Now, whether or not the leadership team wanted to give him a bonus of the year and all that, I think they should. I think they did. But that if they weren't aware of what happened, and if we didn't help them understand that, we broke down because we didn't make sure that foreman was on board with it all. And so we see this innovation challenge with companies. You start to say, are steel erected or ton per hour or 10 per ton per labor, whatever you want to look at, whatever your typical measurements, that might start to look different as I use this. And so we think about prefab and offsite construction. Is it just faster schedules? Is it just better quality? I mean, hopefully it should improve quality. I've now got a more controlled environment to do quality checks before it goes out the door. It should improve costs. Now, for the past 3 years, as we've been talking and helping and reaching out to customers, hard costs, people will say, we haven't seen a big change or dramatic. It's not a lot cheaper when I look at just hard costs. But I'll be honest, past 6 months, some of the better clients we've worked with are saying now, yeah, we are seeing that it's cheaper on hard costs. And you certainly have some of the other benefits we've talked about. I've got less risk because I know things are installed, and I've got to take less risk on the newer foreman that we have out in the field. I've got to take less project risk because I know what components are assembled, and I've designed them and I'm ready. So you could talk about some of these benefits, but the measures of success vary, and usually you're down that road a little bit before you start to see cost differences. Again, if I have 12-hour-an-hour people working in a shop that are newer hires, I could use them to build offsite construction a whole lot easier because I've got supervision and somebody to coach them and see what they do in this shop and help them. And I could get them up to speed and make a difference a lot faster than the 4-year ramp to get them out there in the field and do it, and then and have to pay them, whatever, $20, $25, $30 an hour because now they're foremen or they're plumbers, and I have to pay them those rates. And so I've got ability to leverage. That's what I would call a soft cost difference. And I've got ability to shift my schedule. Again, in a good market, we've got a lot of demand for work. Many of you on the call don't have enough people to install all the work you might have in front of you. And so if I could think about how to do more of it off-site, I can now reduce some of that risk. I can improve my ability and change my scheduling. So we could build it in parallel to the project. So we do have access. We get a lot more done in a short amount of time. And so there's a lot of ways that we could kind of figure out how to get advantage from this and measure. It is tough, and none of this is quick or easy. These are organizational changes, and I love to think about my days in the Army or my days when I was a builder. and even now leading folks here at FMI, anytime you talk about changing the organization, you almost have to take a step back and recognize we're changing people and groups of people, and now that's tough. Humans don't change easily. We could spend another day about change and implementing change and effective ways to do it, but we know that's tough, and so contractors struggle to make it effective. I could tell you best-in-class ways to do it, but still to get it there. And so you see this when we ask folks how successful are they, almost 50% are saying we're not effective. But you really do see a good number of them say, hey, we're good. We're doing something. We're bending conduit. We're doing something. But it's just not synchronized across the organization. And so if your company operationally, go back to the operational ecosystem, if your company operational has silos, we need to come in and help you fix that first before we start going, all right, let's do prefab now, because prefab is going to introduce a whole nother dimension, or offsite construction is going to introduce a whole nother dimension of how do I estimate things? How do I get the field and the shop now to communicate? They weren't talking to the estimating to begin with, and the field and the office weren't talking to begin with. Now I got the shop component that I'm going to want to talk to anyway. So we got to kind of figure out how to smooth out your operational processes while we do prefab or before we do it. But it's not going to fix those things if we have those conditions that are endemic, that they're within most contractors. And so that's really what we see here. Contractors, when we've asked who feels they're best in class, we would almost see the breakdown. We would almost see many say we're not best in class, and many say we can get better, and about 10 to 15% say we're incredible. And so it's very interesting to see this breakout of responses. So again, maybe a question for the audience is what are the challenges you're facing? And that's a bored audience right there. But what are the challenges? They look like it's not a very good professor. There's somebody turned around. I don't know what else is going on in that room. But I'd love if you want to throw up some bullets to hear what are the biggest challenges you're facing if you're going down this road or you're considering going down the road. What are your challenges? And Tyler, I'll rely on you to help me.
Yeah, I'm watching the board. It's we don't have any questions just yet.
All right. And Tyler won't say who said what, so you guys don't worry about it. He won't disclose that this person said they're losing a lot of money every day. We won't have to disclose that part. We'll just tell us what. Yeah. Or you're making a ton of money in your market. That would be a bad thing to disclose too. Everyone will want to get to your market. So as you guys are type in whatever, but the bullet, we're hearing a lot. We're hearing a lot around what are the challenges, and I'm happy to kind of talk some of that through. The survey says the biggest challenges are shift in the culture, the lack of commitment, and this control mindset. So think back to when we talk about best-in-class superintendents. We talk about the superintendent of the future. We got a couple customers going, hey, we want training. Like, all right, well, what are you going to train them to? I'm happy to train on what right looks like, but what is best in class for your company, and what do you want them to do? And then I'll train them. Kind of talk about this superintendent. Traditionally, many of you, hopefully you're on the call, you could yell at me on the chat box here. Traditionally, a superintendent is somebody that has a high care for and degree of control of a project, and that's who does well. So they want to call the vendor 3 times to make sure the stuff's going to show up. Once initially when the PM said he ordered it, to make sure the PM ordered it. Once to make sure they're still making it and it's on the way. Once to make sure it left the shop, and once when it does show up to make sure they got everything right. Like they are on it, and they want to make sure things are right, and they do it well. And they want to check that schedule 3 times, and they want to reach out by phone calls and emails and talk to the guys, make sure they do have what they need, and, all that. Like they are what the stick build method is complex. And I remember when I was building multifamily work, there were trades, unfortunately, stacked up on top of trades, and who was moving here? It was tough for me to wrap my arms around all those moving pieces. And I was thankful to have phenomenal people working with me that were natural at that. That control mindset is often what makes great superintendents so successful. Now, when I say, you know what, you're not going to have control over the materials because we're going to prefabricate them and they're just going to show up. and they're going to be right, we promise. And that is scary to a superintendent. In fact, so we've got to kind of show that superintendent. The way we think about this is, I want to prove to that superintendent that it is going to be right. I want to show him just how the process works. I want to show him or her where they could intervene on that process. I want to show him or her that I've got quality checks, and I want to prove to him or her that it's going to work. So when I start this for organizations, if I start it wrong, if I start it too grand, or if I start trying to do too much and I get it wrong, it's going to be a hard road to hoe moving forward. I've got to prove in small incremental steps that this is working and it's helping and get them on board before I just turn it open. And so open up the valve. And so there's those ways, and some of that is a good mentality. We want to keep the superintendent feeling like they've got ownership for the success of that schedule and the budget and the labor and et cetera, the materials. I still want to move towards an offsite model. And so this control mindset, offsite, and many of my colleagues would argue you're either committed or you're not to do offsite. I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that. It depends which approach you're taking, but as a leadership team, we've got to get on board and move it forward. We can't just dip our toe in the water. And so I think there's incremental commitments you can make and move them forward. I've got customers that say, we're just going to, mechanical, we're just going to bend our hangers. We're just going to prefab our hangers. We're going to do that for the first 6 months and perfect that. And then we're going to figure out how to, if you're an electrical, we're going to figure out how to do, a bus unit or something like that. I mean, we're going to kind of continue to take small pieces that we know are replicated on projects, and that's what we're going to prefab until we can prove that we've got the supply chain working. And what's not well talked about is, not only do I have to estimate it and make it right, but then I've got to get it out to you. I've got to have this transportation or supply component of getting it to you. And then we've got this culture, and that cultural thing, again, is a challenge for all organizations. When we reached out to the operations, and so again, I do 3 to 4 operational summits a year. It's called Leading Operational Excellence. We do 2 on the East Coast, 2 on the West Coast. The last 2 sessions, when I had 60 senior operational leaders from general and subcontractors, here were their pains: people, project controls, and managing growth well, and then organizational challenges, certainly, but and then leading it. And so you could kind of see these 2 slides resonate in a lot of ways. These 2 slides, I can improve project controls with offsite construction. Talent development model gets easier. It's more complex, but it gets easier. We've talked about how we could do that with offsite. Could certainly help show that. How do I build a platform of operational excellence? We spend a lot of time doing this. How do we build a platform of operational excellence so that the company can scale and grow effectively? Offsite construction allows and enables that. It allows us to do that well. And so I can make more components with a little less risk and grow the company and take on the demands of our customers. They want us to do more work in town or travel. How do I do that with offsite construction? It's easier to leverage because I can take less risk doing it. And you see some other themes there. Here's the model I'll share, and then we'll wrap up with any questions, really. But there are 4 major components of offsite or prefab. We feel strongly offsite is the big umbrella. Prefabrication is one method. Modular is another method. We could think about some other pieces there, but offsite's the big umbrella of different ways. I can improve any organization, whether or not you're vertically integrated or partnering. I can improve you with offsite construction methods. Again, I could do a lot of lean work in a shop. That's not the Lean Construction Institute Last Planner method, but I could do a lot of remove waste and get people engaged in waste removal processes. So we think about, what is your strategy? Where in your market is there a demand for modular or offsite construction, and how do you target that market? Within your market, so is there that demand within your market? Are there suppliers of this already that we could use? So for you to spin up in a town a sheet metal shop when there's a low-cost, volume provider of sheet metal, might not make perfect sense right now. And so that might be an opportunity. There might be an acquisition you could make, or a strategic partnership you could make with a vendor that we know does that well. So there's some of that strategy piece that, again, we've got clients say, we want to do more prefab. We know it serves this type of sector within the nation. how do we now, FMI, come help us target those customers? So I could help, I've got team members, and I could help you target and break into other parts of the market that you're not in already. I can help you with that. So there's a strategy part of offsite construction. There's definitely the finance part of offsite construction, and how do I cost it? I mean, is it a cost center or profit center? How do I think through my costs? Do you want to charge by component? I've seen companies charge whether the component is correct or not. We're charging the project, and that's some of those things we have to think about. The compensation side of it, and how do I track my profits? And what measurements am I using? And honestly, are you getting a return? And that's the ultimate driver of how do you want to invest, be it vertically integrate, partner, or subcontract. What's my return on investment? How much am I willing to invest in this? And what's my return need to be for those dollars? Am I better off acquiring a firm, growing a firm, hiring people? What's the best model there? And so there's a finance side of it. Obviously, there's a people side. We've spent some time. There's different skills. I've known a lot of people in this world to say, if I bring a project document in front of my current team and ask them what can be prefabbed, they will highlight 5% of the project. If I bring it in front of somebody from a manufacturing mindset, they will highlight 95% of the project. I mean, it's a different way of seeing a project and how it's built. And so there's a skill around what we're building here that we've got to understand. Certainly getting buy-in to any organizational change is critical, and we have to lead that. And that's a challenge. We spend a lot of our time helping coach the folks that we work with through those implementations. And then finally, the biggest piece is the operations side of it. What are the logistics? How do I do the management around it? How do I manage the shop? What am I displaying in front of the shop for the shop to see and understand? How do we transmit information from the estimating to the shop? What numbers are we using in the estimate? What's that communication process? How do we kick off new projects? What's our resource planning template look like? How do we close out projects? You go on and on with the operational side of the logistics and transportation and quality management. Those are pieces. How do I stack materials, and where do we put them in the shop? And how do I have the right 5S layout for my shop? There's a lot of pieces to that operationally. So this is a model just to kind of look at and understand the complexity of, and I think this could apply just as much for general contractors as it does for specialty or subcontractors. Getting people to embrace these things is probably the biggest challenge. And so all of you, hopefully, are all leaders trying to think about this for your firm and how do we go down the road. Give me a call. These are the complexities that we don't take lightly. I was a leader in the military, I was a leader in the construction industry. That, to me, is something that FMI is very good at and can help you. How do you build that vision? How do you get people bought into it? And how do you keep that commitment so we don't regress back to the old way? Some of you have seen Atul is amazing. He's over at DPR, wonderful guy. He's written a book called Integrating Project Delivery with a couple of his partners. It's really now no longer just doing it. It's kind of figuring out how it fits within the overall strategy. And now DPR is a general contractor that some of you have known as now vertically integrating a bit on some projects. And so it's interesting to see they're self-performing some components. And and Atul is a great forward thinker, brilliant head of technology, brilliant on the technology side and innovation side. For him to say something like that, they're a forward-looking organization. For him to say something like that's serious. I mean, that's how we think about it. It's bigger. That's why that strategy component was on that model that we just looked at, because it's more than just let's do it. It's got to fit within the bigger context, of course, of what we're about here and how to deliver a project. All right. So there's a lot there. I am happy to answer any questions about getting this started. We are almost out of time. I'm happy to answer any questions. You all could reach out to me. We will send a PDF of this deck out to all of you, and then please reach out. I'm happy to get on the phone with you. There's actually no charge to get on the phone with you to talk about some of these things. And if we could help do a survey, remote survey, send you a link, you take a survey, we could talk about some of those components. We're happy to help you with that too. Tyler.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Excellent presentation, and thank you for taking your time, and thank you for everyone that attended today's presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we'll notify everyone next week when the recording is posted on ESEB.com, and we will also be releasing the slides, so you'll have that as a leave behind. Thanks again, and have a great week, everyone.
Hey, y'all be safe. Thanks.